The billionaire arrived at the cemetery just after sunrise. The sky was pale and quiet, and the city noise felt far away. This place was always calm at this hour. He liked it that way. No reporters, no staff, no people asking for favors. Just him and the past he could never escape. His driver waited in the car at the gate, as instructed. The billionaire stepped out alone, holding a small bundle of white flowers. He wore a dark coat that looked simple, nothing like the expensive suits he wore every day. Out here, titles meant nothing. Money meant nothing. As he walked down the narrow path, his steps slowed. He had taken this same walk many times over the years, yet it never became easier. Each visit felt heavier than the last. The headstone he was going toward carried a name he could barely say out loud anymore. His daughter. She had been gone for 5 years. 5 long years filled with meetings, flights, deals, and sleepless nights. From the outside, his life looked successful. His company had grown. His face appeared on magazine covers. People called him powerful, lucky, unstoppable, but none of that followed him here. Every visit brought back the same thoughts. The missed calls he ignored. The messages he planned to answer later, but never did. The arguments that ended with silence instead of apology. He always believed there would be time. Time to fix things. Time to explain. Time to be a better father. He was wrong. As he came closer to the grave, he noticed something unusual. Someone was already there. He stopped walking. A man in a worn gray jacket was kneeling near the headstone. His clothes looked old but clean, the kind worn by someone who worked with their hands. Beside him stood a small child, holding the man's arm tightly. The child couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old. The billionaire frowned. This grave was rarely visited by anyone but him. He paid for the plot himself. He kept the location private. How could someone else be here? And why did they look so emotional? He stepped back slightly, choosing to watch from a distance. The janitor's shoulders shook as he spoke softly toward the grave. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but the pain in it was clear. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, not caring how it looked. The child looked up at him, confused and worried. "It's okay," the janitor said gently, forcing a small smile for the child. "She's watching us. She wouldn't want you to be scared." The billionaire felt a strange tightening in his chest. The janitor placed a small bunch of wildflowers near the headstone. They weren't fancy or expensive. They looked like flowers picked from the side of a road. Yet the care in how he placed them made them feel important. The child suddenly leaned forward and touched the cold stone. "Mom," the child said quietly. Word hit the billionaire like a blow. He took an unsteady step forward, his breath catching. His heart began to race. Did he hear that right? His mind tried to reject it, but the sound echoed in his head again and again. Mom. His daughter had a child. No, that wasn't possible. He would have known. Someone would have told him. He had people everywhere. Lawyers, assistants, investigators. Nothing happened in his world without reaching him. Or so he believed. The janitor bowed his head again, his voice breaking. "I promised her I'd come today," he said. "I promised I'd keep you safe." The billionaire felt dizzy. His hand tightened around the flowers he carried. His daughter's face appeared in his mind, not as she was when she died, but as she was when she was young, smiling, laughing, running toward him when he came home late from work. When did that stop? He remembered the day she told him she wanted a simpler life. He laughed it off, telling her she didn't understand how the world worked. He remembered how quiet she became after that, how distant. He blamed it on her being emotional, on stress, on youth. He never asked the right questions. The janitor helped the child sit on the grass. He pulled out a small piece of bread from his pocket and handed it to the child. "Eat slowly," he said kindly. "We still have a walk ahead." The billionaire watched in silence. This man didn't look like someone pretending. There was no sign of greed, no fear, just grief and responsibility. The billionaire cleared his throat, the sound louder than he expected. The janitor looked up, startled. His eyes widened when he saw the well-dressed stranger standing a few steps away. He stood quickly, placing himself slightly in front of the child without thinking. "I'm sorry," the billionaire said, his voice stiff. "I didn't mean to interrupt." The janitor studied him for a moment. "This is a public place," he said carefully. "Anyone can visit." "Yes," the billionaire replied. "I know." Silence fell between them. The billionaire glanced at the headstone, then back at the child. His mind was filled with questions, but none of them felt safe to ask yet. He felt like a stranger at his own daughter's grave. "You knew her?" the billionaire asked finally. The janitor nodded slowly. "Yes, very well." The billionaire swallowed hard. "How?" The janitor hesitated, looking down at the child again. "She helped me once," he said, "when no one else did." That answer only deepened the mystery. The billionaire looked at the grave again. He noticed something he had never seen before. A small carving at the bottom of the stone, almost hidden. A simple phrase his daughter had once said to him during an argument. "Kindness matters more than comfort." His chest ached. He realized then how little he truly knew about the life his daughter lived after she walked away from his world. This janitor, this child, these quiet tears, they were pieces of her story he had never bothered to read. For the first time in years, the billionaire didn't feel in control. He didn't feel powerful. He felt small. He placed his expensive white flowers beside the wild ones. They looked out of place together, yet somehow right. "I come here often," he said quietly, "but I feel like today is the first time I'm really seeing her." The janitor didn't respond. He only nodded, his eyes filled with a pain that matched the billionaire's own. The child reached out and took the janitor's hand, and in that moment, standing beside his daughter's grave, the billionaire felt something shift inside him. A truth he could no longer avoid was waiting to be uncovered. This visit was not like the others. It was only the beginning. The billionaire stayed standing, unsure what to do next. The sight of the janitor kneeling with the child had stirred a storm inside him. He wanted to turn away, to leave and pretend he had not seen anything. But something held him there, a curiosity and a pull he could not explain. He took a cautious step forward. The child looked up at him, eyes wide with both fear and curiosity. There was no fear of the man himself. It was more of a questioning, the kind that a small child has when they feel something new and unfamiliar. The janitor quickly bent down, placing his hand protectively on the child's shoulder. I didn't mean to intrude," the billionaire said softly, trying to keep his voice calm. "I usually come here alone." The janitor looked at him, studying the expensive suit, the neat shoes, the watch that glimmered in the early light. He could see the distance in the man's eyes, the unfamiliarity with grief that was raw and unpolished. Still, there was something honest in his tone. "It is a public place," the janitor said again, this time softer, almost a question. "Anyone can come, even if you weren't expecting me." The billionaire nodded. He felt a sudden embarrassment. He was used to being in control, to dictating terms and shaping the environment around him. Yet here, standing before this janitor and child, he realized he had no power. He could not command respect or attention through wealth or reputation. He could only be a man facing the truth. "Do you know her well?" he asked finally, his voice hesitant. The janitor paused. He looked down at the child, then back at the billionaire. "I knew her," he said carefully. closer than most. She trusted me when others walked away. The billionaire's chest tightened. He thought he knew everything about his daughter. He had access to her life through assistants, phone records, and people who reported to him. Yet he had never known this. Not even a hint. How could he have missed it? The child tugged lightly at the janitor's coat. "He's sad," the child whispered. The janitor nodded. "Yes, he is. Everyone who loved her carries some of her sadness." The billionaire knelt down slightly, not to touch, but to lower himself to the child's level. I am sorry," he said softly. "I didn't know." "I didn't? I couldn't." The words caught in his throat. Years of regret and missed moments rose like a tide. He remembered calling her, promising to come home early, and then staying late at work. He remembered the times he dismissed her concerns, the times he left her alone with her thoughts and worries. He realized that in all those moments, he had failed her in ways that money or power could never fix. The janitor's eyes softened. "She always said you did what you thought was best." She understood in her own way. But she wanted things different. She wanted life simple. She wanted to be seen as more than the daughter of someone like you. The billionaire swallowed hard. The truth stung more than he expected. He had always thought of her as the little girl in the house, the child he had to protect, the girl whose happiness was a reflection of his success. But he never understood her choices. He never saw her world from her eyes. The child looked up at him, her small hand reaching toward the grave. "Mom loved us," she said quietly. The billionaire's eyes filled with tears he tried to hide. He could hear it clearly now. The love that had existed, the life that had been lived quietly and bravely, away from the limelight. The child's words cut through the fog of years, spent chasing deals and money. "I wish I had been there," he whispered. "I wish I had known. I wish I could have." The janitor gently placed his hand on the child's back and guided her to sit closer to him. "We all have regrets," he said. "But you are here now. That counts for something." The billionaire nodded. He realized that his presence alone could not change the past. But perhaps it could change the future. Perhaps there was still a chance to honor his daughter, to protect the life she had created, to care for the child he never knew existed. He took another careful step closer to the grave. He looked down at the janitor, and then at the child. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. "I want to understand. I want to know her life. I want to know her world." The janitor studied him. There was a long pause, as if weighing the man's sincerity. Finally, he nodded. "We can talk," he said. "But first, you need to understand that life isn't about money here. It's about care, about presence, about love." The billionaire felt the weight of those words. He had always measured life by success, wealth, power. But here, none of it mattered. The only thing that mattered was the bond between the living and the memory of the lost. He knelt beside the child, letting his eyes rest on the little face full of innocence and grief. He felt an urge to protect, to nurture, something he had thought he had lost the ability to do. He had built walls of business and pride, but this child reminded him of a vulnerability he had not felt in years. The janitor spoke again, his voice low and steady. "She left instructions. Not many, but some. She wanted to be remembered for the kindness she gave. She wanted her child to grow knowing love, not wealth." The billionaire nodded slowly, understanding for the first time that wealth could never replace love. He felt a sense of shame, but also a glimmer of hope. He had been given a second chance in a way he never expected. He had been invited into a world of quiet dignity, a world his daughter had built outside of his reach. For a while, none of them spoke. The child sat between them, holding on to the janitor's hand. The billionaire looked at the grave, tracing the letters with his eyes, imagining the life that had been lived and the choices that had been made. He realized that all this time he had only seen the surface. Now he was beginning to see the depth. The sun rose slowly, casting soft light across the cemetery. The billionaire felt warmth in the cool morning air. It was not the warmth of power or money, but the warmth of understanding. The warmth of beginning to connect, even if it was late. Finally, the janitor broke the silence. "She loved you," he said simply, "even when it hurt, even when you didn't understand. She loved you in her own way." The billionaire closed his eyes, letting the tears fall freely. "I love her too," he whispered, "and I'm so sorry I wasn't there." The child looked up at him and smiled faintly. It was a smile that spoke of hope, of trust, of a small beginning. The billionaire realized that this moment, standing beside this janitor and this child, was the start of something he could never buy, something he could only earn. He knelt there for a long time, letting the morning pass, letting the grief settle, letting the presence of his daughter's life fill the emptiness he had carried for years. He realized that sometimes the most important lessons came not from wealth or power, but from quiet moments, shared sorrow, and the courage of ordinary people. The billionaire finally stood, feeling a mix of sadness and resolve. He had questions, so many questions, but he knew one thing. He had to stay, had to learn, had to become a part of the story he had been missing. And with that thought, he took a deep breath, ready to listen, ready to understand, ready to see the life his daughter had led through the eyes of those who loved her truly. The day had only just begun, and with it came the first steps toward reconciliation, understanding, and perhaps a kind of redemption he had long believed impossible. The billionaire sat on the edge of a small stone bench near the grave, still trying to process everything he had seen that morning. The janitor remained close to the child, keeping a gentle hand on the little one's shoulder. The child fidgeted slightly, looking between the two men, sensing the weight of unspoken words in the air. The billionaire took a deep breath and finally spoke, his voice soft but firm. "I need to know everything. About her, about the child, about why no one told me." The janitor nodded slowly. He seemed prepared for this, though his eyes were careful, measuring each word. "It's not an easy story," he said, "but you deserve to hear it. She trusted me with parts of her life she could not share with anyone else." The billionaire leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. "Please, start from the beginning." The janitor took a moment to glance at the grave, his voice catching as he began. "She had a hard life, even before she met you. People around her, even family, judged her for being different, for wanting her own path. She worked quietly, tried to make the world a little better, one act of kindness at a time." The billionaire swallowed hard. He had always thought of his daughter as someone fragile who needed his protection, but he now realized that she had been stronger than he ever understood, strong enough to live life on her terms, even if it meant turning away from wealth and comfort. "She met me when she was at her lowest," the janitor continued. "No one else wanted to help. She had lost trust in many people. She had dreams, but the world seemed too heavy. I was just someone who listened, who didn't judge, who offered small kindnesses. She stayed with me sometimes when she had nowhere else to go." The billionaire's chest tightened. How had he never known this? How could someone so close, someone so important, have been invisible to him in the years he thought he was involved in her life? He felt a wave of guilt he could not escape. The child leaned against the janitor, listening quietly. The billionaire noticed that the child's eyes were curious, absorbing each word. He realized that the little one was part of a life he had missed entirely, a life built on quiet care and simple acts of love. She became pregnant, the janitor said gently. She wanted the child, but she didn't want the world to use it as another way to control her. She wanted to raise the child with love, not with wealth and expectations. I promised her I would help, and I kept that promise. The billionaire felt his heart pound. He had imagined every possible tragedy in his daughter's life, but never this. A grandchild, someone who carried her life forward. And yet, he had been completely unaware. She never spoke of it, the janitor continued. She didn't want to hurt you or make you feel like you had failed. But she also wanted the child to grow up without the weight of your world. She wanted something real, something simple. The billionaire closed his eyes, tears slipping down his cheeks. All his wealth, all his power, had been meaningless in protecting or understanding his daughter. He had assumed that by providing money and comfort, he had fulfilled his role. But the truth was far more complicated and far more painful. How did she pass? He asked quietly, though he feared the answer. The janitor looked down at the child before answering. Illness. Something sudden. Something she faced quietly, as she had faced everything. She didn't want anyone to worry. She didn't want drama. She wanted peace. The billionaire's fists clenched. If only he had known. If only he had been there. The years of absence weighed heavily on him. Every missed birthday, every ignored call, every time he chose work over presence seemed like a mountain on his shoulders. And the child? He asked, his voice barely audible. The janitor's eyes softened. She asked me to raise the child, to keep them safe, to teach them love, kindness, and strength. And that is what I have tried to do every day since. The billionaire's gaze shifted to the small child beside the janitor. She was looking at him, her eyes open and honest, filled with trust but also curiosity. She seemed unaware of the magnitude of the moment, yet somehow understood the weight of the man before her. I don't know what to say, he whispered. I've failed her in every way. The janitor shook his head. She would not want you to blame yourself. She wanted you to see that life is bigger than mistakes. Life is about what we do after, about presence, about learning and growing. You can still be a part of this, if you are willing. The billionaire felt something stir in his chest, a mix of hope and fear. Hope that he could reconnect, fear that he might not be welcomed, fear that it was too late. He looked down at the child again, who had quietly taken a small wildflower from the ground and held it out toward him. He hesitated, then reached gently to take it. The child smiled faintly, and he felt a connection he had never expected, a bond that could be nurtured if he allowed it. The janitor spoke again. She wanted you to understand. She wanted you to know her life. But more than anything, she wanted you to care for this child, not with wealth, but with your presence and heart. The billionaire nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. He realized that everything he had believed about what mattered had been wrong. It was not about money or power or influence. It was about love, about showing up, about being there when it truly counts. He took a deep breath. I want to be part of their life. I want to help. Not with money, not with control, but with me, with my presence. I want to honor her memory properly. The janitor studied him, seeing sincerity in his eyes. Slowly, he nodded. Then you are welcome. But know this, it is not easy. It is a life of responsibility, patience, and quiet devotion. You cannot rush it. I understand, the billionaire said firmly. I am ready to learn. The child reached out again, holding his hand briefly. He felt a warmth that he had not felt in years. The janitor placed a reassuring hand on the child's back, and together the three sat quietly, letting the morning pass. The sun rose higher, and with it came a sense of fragile hope. The billionaire understood that the journey ahead would be long. He would have to earn trust, learn patience, and understand the life his daughter had built quietly and bravely. But for the first time in years, he felt a small spark of purpose, a chance to do something meaningful beyond wealth and power. For a long while, none of them spoke. The only sound was the rustle of leaves and the distant hum of the city. The billionaire looked at the child, then at the janitor, then back at the grave. He realized that life was more than business deals and success stories. Life was about connection, about love, and about remembering those we lost by caring for what they left behind. The child finally whispered, "She would like it if we were together." The billionaire nodded, tears falling freely. "I will be," he promised. "I will be here, and I will not let her down again." And in that moment, standing and sitting together at the grave, the billionaire, the janitor, and the child began to weave a new story. One that would honor the past, embrace the present, and create a future built not on wealth, but on love and care. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was real, and it was theirs to walk. The billionaire stayed at the cemetery longer than he had planned. He could feel the weight of the conversation settling into his bones, pressing him to think about the mistakes he had made and the opportunities he had lost. He glanced at the janitor, who was now sitting on the grass with the child leaning against him, and felt an unfamiliar mix of awe and humility. "I want to understand everything," the billionaire said quietly. "Not just about her life, but about how I can be part of theirs now. How I can help." The janitor looked at him carefully, sensing the depth of his sincerity. "It is not easy," he said. "This child has grown up in a world of simplicity. No luxuries, no grand expectations, just care and attention. You cannot rush that. You cannot force love or connection." The billionaire nodded, understanding that patience would be his first lesson. He had spent decades solving problems with money and influence, but here, neither would work. He would have to learn a new kind of effort, one measured not in numbers, but in moments, trust, and understanding. "Then I will do whatever it takes," he said. "I will learn. I want to be present, even if it takes years to earn it." The janitor smiled faintly, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "That is a good start. Presence is everything. Listen more than you speak. Be patient, be kind, and do not try to control. She would want you to be gentle with this child, as I have been." The child looked up at him again, curious and alert. The billionaire felt a warmth spreading in his chest. He realized that the small gestures, the moments of attention, the simple acts of care, could rebuild what had been lost. He could not change the past, but he could shape the future. "Will you tell me about her?" he asked the janitor. "Tell me everything she loved, everything that mattered to her. I want to know her as she truly was." The janitor nodded. "She loved simple things," he began. "A quiet morning with a cup of tea, a walk in the park, helping others without asking for thanks. She found joy in small moments, in acts of kindness that no one noticed. She wanted life to be meaningful, not flashy." The billionaire listened intently, picturing his daughter in these moments, realizing how far he had been from her world. He had lived surrounded by wealth, meetings, and expectations, while she had embraced simplicity and humility. He felt a pang of regret, but also a spark of admiration. "She was brave," the janitor continued. "She faced challenges that would have broken others, yet she carried herself with dignity and grace. She protected her child fiercely and loved quietly. That is why I respect her so much." The billionaire's eyes filled with tears again. "I should have known," he whispered. "I should have seen it, appreciated it, been there for her." The janitor placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Now you can. That is what matters. It is never too late to care, to support, and to build a connection. Start with small steps, and the rest will follow. The child tugged gently at the janitor's sleeve and spoke softly. He looks sad, but he wants to be nice. I think he will try. The billionaire smiled faintly, touched by the honesty of the child. I will try, he said, and I will not give up. For the next hour, they sat together, sharing memories and stories. The janitor spoke of the daughter's favorite books, her love for nature, her laughter, and her quiet resilience. The billionaire listened, absorbing every detail, imagining the life she had lived beyond the reach of his wealth and influence. As the sun climbed higher, casting a warm light across the cemetery, the billionaire realized that this moment marked the beginning of a journey he had never expected. It was not a journey of deals or power, but of understanding, patience, and love. He would have to rebuild trust slowly to earn the child's confidence, and to honor his daughter's memory through presence, not possessions. I want to help raise her, he said finally, nodding toward the child. I don't want to replace you or dictate how she grows. I want to be part of her life in the way she needs me to be. The janitor studied him carefully. That is a promise that must be kept with actions, not words, he said. She would have wanted you to prove your care through consistent presence, through understanding, through patience. The billionaire nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He had been given a second chance, a rare opportunity to be part of a life he had once neglected. He knew it would not be easy, but he was ready to face the challenges. The child shifted closer, sensing the billionaire's sincerity. Will you tell stories? She asked. About Mom? Yes, he replied, his voice soft but certain. I want to know her through you, through the stories you remember and the memories you share. I want to honor her in every way I can. The janitor nodded, satisfied that the billionaire understood the responsibility. Then we can start, he said. One day at a time. One moment at a time. That is how life continues, even after loss. The three of them remained at the grave for the rest of the morning, sharing stories, listening, and finding small ways to connect. The billionaire began to understand that this was not just about guilt or regret, but about learning, growing, and embracing a life built on care and attention. He realized that wealth had never mattered, but love and presence did. As they finally prepared to leave, the billionaire felt a sense of calm he had not experienced in years. The journey ahead would be long and filled with challenges, but for the first time, he felt a direction, a purpose beyond business and wealth. He understood that the life his daughter had built, though separate from his own, was one worth honoring and protecting. He took the child's hand gently, feeling a small but powerful connection. We will do this together, he whispered. I will not let her memory fade. I will be here. The janitor nodded, a quiet approval in his eyes. The bond between them was forming, slow and careful, built on trust, honesty, and shared grief. The billionaire understood that this was the start of a new chapter, one that would require patience, humility, and deep care. As they walked away from the grave, the sun shining warmly above, the billionaire felt a shift within himself. He had faced his failures, confronted his regrets, and found a path forward. It was not easy, and it would not be quick, but it was real. It was human. And for the first time in a long time, he felt hope for the future, hope for the connection he could build, and hope for a life that honored his daughter in the truest way possible. The days after the visit to the cemetery were filled with reflection for the billionaire. He returned to his office, sat in his large, quiet room, and thought about the conversation he had had with the janitor and the child. The weight of his past decisions pressed on him, but for the first time, he saw a way forward. He knew that the only way to honor his daughter's memory was through action. Not money, not gifts, not influence, but through presence and care. He contacted the janitor, asking if they could meet again. The janitor agreed, cautious but willing. They chose a quiet park, a neutral place where the child could feel comfortable and free. When the billionaire arrived, he was nervous. This was not a boardroom, not a business negotiation. This was a moment that required sincerity, patience, and humility. The child ran up to them, her face lighting up when she saw the billionaire. He smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest he hadn't known in years. The janitor nodded approvingly, seeing the child's comfort and recognizing the sincerity in the man's eyes. They began slowly, walking through the park, talking about simple things. The billionaire listened more than he spoke, learning about the child's daily life, her favorite stories, the things that made her laugh, and the quiet moments that mattered most. He realized that this was the foundation he needed to build: understanding, attention, and trust. Over the next few weeks, he made consistent efforts. He visited the child regularly, sometimes for long walks, sometimes for short afternoons in the park, always careful not to overwhelm or rush. He learned to engage with patience, letting the child guide the pace, letting her feel safe and unpressured. Slowly, a bond began to form, fragile but real. One afternoon, they sat on a bench under a large oak tree, watching the sunlight filter through the leaves. The child asked him questions about her mother's childhood, about the stories he remembered, about the times he had been present in her life before he failed to be consistent. He answered honestly, acknowledging mistakes, sharing memories, and offering lessons he wished he had taught her mother. The child listened, her eyes wide, absorbing the depth of his sincerity. She felt a connection growing, a bridge being built between the past and the present. The billionaire also spent time with the janitor, learning from him how to support the child without overstepping boundaries. He realized that the janitor's role had been vital, protecting and nurturing the child while maintaining the delicate balance between care and independence. He respected the janitor deeply and sought his guidance often, understanding that building trust required collaboration and humility. Slowly, the billionaire began to understand the small joys of ordinary life, the kind his daughter had cherished. They baked bread together one afternoon, a simple activity that brought laughter and the warmth of shared effort. He learned to appreciate the quiet victories, the milestones of learning and growing that were measured not in money, but in smiles, confidence, and love. Over time, he noticed changes in himself. He became more patient, more attentive, and more aware of the subtle emotional needs of the child. He understood that being present was more than showing up physically. It was listening, understanding, responding with care, and sharing love without expectation. Each visit, each conversation, each small gesture was a building block, slowly weaving a new family bond that could honor his daughter's memory. One morning, they returned to the cemetery together. The child carried a small bouquet of wildflowers, while the billionaire held a single white bloom. They approached the grave together, standing side by side. The billionaire felt a profound sense of connection and responsibility, a commitment to protect the memory of his daughter and nurture the life she had created. They laid the flowers together, a quiet ritual of remembrance, love, and the start of something new. The child spoke softly. "Mom would like this. She would like us to be together." The billionaire knelt, placing his hand gently on hers. "We will make her proud," he said, "and I will be here for you always." The janitor smiled, seeing the bond that had formed, and knew that the child's life would continue with love, guidance, and stability. He had protected her in the past, and now he could witness a new chapter unfolding, one where the billionaire was truly present, not as a figure of wealth or authority, but as a caring, attentive guardian. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The billionaire became a regular part of the child's life. He attended school events, helped with homework, and shared stories of her mother, keeping her memory alive in a way that was honest, gentle, and nurturing. He learned to celebrate the child's individuality, to encourage her curiosity, and to provide support without overshadowing her independence. He also faced challenges. There were moments of doubt, times when the child withdrew or tested boundaries, reminding him that trust is fragile and must be earned consistently. But he persisted, remembering the lessons of patience and humility. Every challenge was an opportunity to deepen the bond, to show love through action, and to honor the life of his daughter in the choices he made. One quiet evening, the billionaire found himself alone in the park with the child, sharing a small picnic. She looked up at him and said, "I think she would be happy now. I feel her with us." He smiled, feeling the truth in her words. The journey had been long, the grief profound, but they were building something lasting, a family formed through love, understanding, and shared responsibility. He realized that wealth and power had never mattered. What mattered was presence, care, and the willingness to grow into the role of a guardian with patience and compassion. The billionaire reflected on how far they had come. He had once been distant, unaware, and unprepared for the real lessons of life. Now he understood the importance of listening, of showing up, of being there through small, meaningful moments. He realized that this child, and the memory of his daughter, had transformed him, teaching him what truly mattered in life. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the park, he held the child's hand gently and whispered, "We will keep her memory alive. We will live with love, care, and kindness, just as she would have wanted." The child leaned against him, a quiet trust between them. The billionaire felt a profound peace. He had found redemption not in wealth or status, but in human connection, in presence, and in the commitment to nurture a life that mattered more than anything else. The journey was ongoing, but the path was clear, and he walked it with determination, humility, and love. In that moment, standing in the warm glow of the setting sun, surrounded by quiet beauty and a sense of hope, the billionaire knew that life had given him a second chance. A chance to be a father in the truest sense, to protect, guide, and love. He had learned that even after loss, even after years of absence, it was never too late to rebuild, to honor, and to embrace the ones who mattered most. And together, they began a new chapter, one filled with care, understanding, and the quiet, enduring power of love.